Yeah.
All right. The Stow Munroe Falls City School District Board of Education will vote to call the meeting to order. Those in attendance are reminded that this is a meeting of the board conducted in view of the public. Comments from the public during this meeting amount to the obstruction of a public meeting. This time I'd like to appoint Ms. Bellio, Treasurer Pro Tem. Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong.
Here.
Ms. Powers.
Here.
Ms. Matthews.
Here.
Mr. Bonacci.
Here.
Ms. Bedio. Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
During the January 27th, 2015 special meeting, after reviewing board docs this morning, it is unclear whether the proper agenda was posted on board docs. The proper agenda for tonight's special board meeting is before the board members to review and consider. A copy has also been provided to Treasurer Bulgrin. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented to the board members and Treasurer Bulgrin?
A motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Please roll call.
Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Mr. Bonacci.
Aye.
Ms. Bedio. Aye. Pat Matthews.
Aye.
Karen Powers.
Aye.
During the January 27th, 2015 special meeting of the board conducted its first reading of the resolution to amend bylaws 0156 and 0174. Today, the board is reading this resolution for the second time. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution to amend bylaws 0156 and 0174?
Motion to adopt. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, there's discussion. Okay. I am wondering, because of the grievance that we did as a board, and we were told that we were going to be acting subject to a fine or from whatever, if we allowed Mr. Morrison to continue being the treasurer. And I don't quite understand why we are changing our bylaws at this stage of the game to include Munroe Falls Law Director in our bylaws, since he wasn't in there before, or the lawyer for Munroe Falls was not in there before. I have a problem with that. It looks like we didn't do things correctly in the first place, and then we're trying to change it now. That's my piece.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Mr. Bonacci.
Aye.
Ms. Bedio. Aye. Ms. Matthews.
No.
Ms. Powers.
Abstain.
Because the board has a need for 2 executive sessions, I move that the board recess into 2 executive sessions for the purpose of considering the employment, dismissal, and discipline of a public employee, and 2, conferences with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of imminent court action. Information to be discussed during this executive session is confidential. As such, preserving confidentiality is necessary for the conduct of the board's business and therefore subject to non-disclosure requirements of RC 102.03B. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Mr. Panacci.
Aye.
Ms. Bedio, aye. Ms. Matthews.
Aye.
Ms. Powers.
Aye.
The motion is passed. The time is 5:39, and we are now recessed into executive session. The time is now 5:53, and we are now out of executive session. On January 28, 2015, at 8:07 a.m., Attorney Matt Markling provided Attorney Jack Morrison Jr. with an email that reads in part, "It is the board's intent to recess into executive session tomorrow night to provide your client with an opportunity to be heard with respect to allegations contained in the January 19, 2015 letter provided to her. This is not an RC 3319.16 hearing, and the board firmly believes that any pre-discipline, pre-termination conference meeting before the board should be held in executive session to protect the interests of all employees, including your client. Nonetheless, if your client demands the opportunity to be heard as to the allegations contained in the January 19, 2015 letter provided to her in public rather than executive session, please provide that demand to me in writing, and I will share the same with the board." On January 29, 2015, at 10:45 a.m., Attorney Markling provided Attorney Morrison with an email that reads in part, "I have not heard back from you in response to my email to you of yesterday, January 28, 2015, at 8:07 a.m. It is the board's intent to recess into executive session tonight to provide your client with an opportunity to be heard with respect to the allegations contained in the January 19, 2015 letter provided to her. This is not an RC 3319.16 hearing. And the board firmly believes that any pre-discipline, pre-termination conference meeting before the board should be held in executive session to protect the interests of all employees, including your client. If your client demands the opportunity to be heard as to the allegations contained in the January 19, 2015 letter provided to her in public rather than executive session, please provide that demand to me in writing, and I will share the same with the board. On January 29, 2015, at 1:31 p.m., Attorney Morrison sent Attorney Markling an email demanding that the pre-discipline, pre-termination conference meeting be conducted in open session. While the board firmly believes that any pre-discipline, pre-termination conference meeting before the board should be held in executive session to protect the interests of all employees, including Treasurer Bulgrin, the board will honor any demand from Treasurer Bulgrin that she have the opportunity to be heard as to the allegations contained in the January 19, 2015 letter provided to her by the board in open session rather than executive session. Treasurer Bulgrin, are you still demanding that you have the opportunity to be heard as to the allegation contained in the January 19th, 2015 letter provided to you by the board in open session rather than executive session?
As representative for Catherine Bulgrin, I have conveyed that to Mr. Markling. She stands by her demands that this be done in public session in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, Section 122.22G1.
As Treasurer Bulgrin is demanding that she have the opportunity to be heard as to the allegations contained in the January 19th, 2015 letter provided to her by the board in open session rather than executive session, the board will proceed in open session. Treasurer Bulgrin, a table has been set up for you and your counsel to sit so you can be heard. You are also being provided with a copy of the January 19th, 2015 letter that was provided to you by the board for your convenience. This open session is being videotaped. The tape will need to be changed approximately every 45 minutes. The videographer will inform everyone 5 minutes before he needs to change the tape, so Treasurer Bulgrin and her counsel can prepare to stop so that the tape may be changed. I will call a brief recess while the tape is being changed. Once the tape is changed, I will declare that we are back into open session. Treasurer Bulgrin and her counsel will then resume. The purpose of this pre-discipline, pre-termination conference meeting is to provide Treasurer Bulgrin an opportunity to be heard as to the allegations contained in the January 19th, 2015 letter provided to her by the board. I will read each allegation to Treasurer Bulgrin individually. Treasurer Bulgrin will then be given the opportunity to be heard as to each allegation individually through her counsel, herself, or both. Treasurer Bulgrin, paragraph 1, alleges that during the 2014 calendar year, you were routinely absent from administrative cabinet meetings. Superintendent Russell D. Jones requested that you attend these meetings and rescheduled the start time of the administrative cabinet meetings to 9:30 a.m. to accommodate you. However, you continue to routinely absent from the meetings. This conduct violates both Board Policy 1320 in your employment contract and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
On behalf of Catherine Bulgrin, I would like to indicate that we are going to present to the board and to counsel for the board and to the media and to any other public individual that would like a copy, a written response to the Loudermill letter. The reason being is that the school board saw fit to make the Loudermill disciplinary hearing conference memo or letter of January 19, 2015 public, and therefore Ms. Bulgrin has an equal right to make her point-by-point rebuttal public. And so I am going to provide to the board and to counsel for the board and to the public and the media a written response to each and every one of the allegations. The original I will deliver to Mr. Armstrong. Mrs. Bulgrin will rest on the response that she has articulated to each of the 25 allegations. She has expressly stated in the Loudermill letter response that this is her interim response. She reserves the right to provide further support once this board provides a response to the public records request that has been made, requesting any and all documents supporting any of the allegations that were made against her in the January 19th letter, as well as all personnel-related records and the like that relate to Catherine Bulgrin. So she will not make any further comment on the allegations other than what is contained in the writing until such time as she has received a response to the public records request. Thank you very much.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 1?
We've responded.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 2 alleges that in September 2014, the board reviewed a badge activity report for your key card and that you used to enter the board office. Your employment contract with the board states that your duties will generally be performed during normal business hours. Your consistent late arrival times interfered with you performing the duties of your position, including, but not limited to, attendance at administrative cabinet meetings. Your repeated late arrivals to work constitute a violation of both Board Policy 1320 and your employment contract, and constitute good and just cause for discipline or termination under Revised Code 3319.16. Please respond.
We've already responded by virtue of the writing I've delivered to you.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 2?
We reserve the right to provide a further response once we receive a response to the public records request that has been delivered to the board.
Do you have anything else to say to paragraph 2?
I've said what I have to say.
Pardon? I couldn't hear you.
I said that as soon as we get a response to the public records request that we've made, we will provide a supplemental response.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 3 alleges that since September 4th, 2014, you failed to use your key card to enter the board office. This constitutes a violation of both Board Policy 1320 in your employment contract and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination. RC 3319.16. Please respond.
We provide a written response, and that's all we will be saying at this time, until such time as we get a response to our public records request that was delivered to the board.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 3?
We reserve the right to submit additional information once we have received a response to the public records request.
Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 4 alleges that on September 11th, 2014, you met with then Board President Fred Bonacci, Board Member Pat Matthews, and Board Attorney Thomas Giffels to discuss the time you arrived to work. You were directed by Board President Bonacci and Board Member Matthews that your normal work hours at the board office would be from either 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 9:30 to 5:30 p.m. During this meeting, you agree that your normal work hours at the board office are from either 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 9:30 to 5:30 p.m. Your refusal to use your key card to enter the board office and arrive to work during normal working hours is a violation of the Board Policy 1320, and your employment contract, and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
The written response that we've provided to the board articulates her interim response to that allegation. We reserve the right to provide additional information once the board has responded to the public records request that has been delivered to the board.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 4?
No.
Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 5 alleges at the September 11th, 2014 meeting with Board President Bonacci, Board members Matthews, and attorneys Giffords, you represented that the Treasurer's Office staff works staggered shifts during the Treasurer's Office being staffed beginning at 7 o'clock a.m. each day. You were then directed by Board President Bonacci and Board Member Matthews to provide the Board with the staggered staff schedule, which you agreed to do. However, you failed to provide the Board with the staggered staff schedule. On October 13th, 2014, you met with the Board in executive session to review our annual objectives for the 2014-2015 school year. During this meeting, the Board again directed you to provide it with the staggered staff schedule. You agreed. And yet it was only after the Board took action to non-renew your employment contract on January 13th, 2015, and advised your legal counsel that the Board would be proceeding with the discipline termination process, that you finally provided a staggered staff schedule to the Board on Friday, January 16th, 2015. Your repeated failure to comply with the Board directives constitutes a violation of both Board Policy 1320 and your employment contract, and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
We provided a written response to the allegation. We reserve the right to submit additional information once the Board responds to our public records request.
Do you have anything else to say with respect?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 6 alleges you have failed to record your absences from work in the absences of the Treasurer's Office staff in the Board's ASOP absence management system. This prevents the Board from monitoring vacation and personal day use by you and your staff, and could result in overpayment to you and your staff. Your repeated and continued failure to record your staff in your staff's absences from work constitutes a violation of Board Policy 1200, Board Policy 1320, and RC 3319.141, and constitutes an just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
We provided a written response that's in the document presented to you. We reserve the right to supplement it once we receive the documents responsive to our public records request.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 6?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 7 alleges that on October 13th, 2014, you met with the Board in executive session to review your annual objectives. For the 2014-2015 school year, during this meeting, the Board directed you to provide the Board a report on non-payroll spending by your department no later than November 27th, 2014. You agreed. You did not provide the report by November 27th, 2014. Rather, only after the Board took action to non-renew your employment contract on January 13th, 2015, you advised your legal counsel that the Board would be proceeding with the discipline/termination process. Did you finally provide a draft copy of the report to the Board on Friday, January 16th, 2015? Your failure to provide the Board with this financial report by the agreed upon deadline or in even a remotely timely manner constitutes a violation of Board Policy 1320 in your employment contract and constitutes good and just cause for discipline and termination under revised code 3319.16. Do you have anything to say with respect to paragraph 7?
Mrs. Bulgrin has provided a written response to that allegation. She has reserved the right to supplement her response once the board has responded to her public records request.
Thank you. Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 7?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer Barber. Paragraph 8 alleges that prior to and during the October 13th, 2014 meeting with the board to review your annual objectives for the 2014-15 school year, the board directed you to include the days you will be out of the office in your board updates. You agreed. However, you have refused to consistently provide that information to the board. Your continued refusal to always include the days you will be out of the office in your board updates, despite the board's directive to do the same, constitutes a violation of board policy 1320 in your employment contract and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
Ms. Bulgrin has provided a written response to that allegation. She reserves the right to provide supplemental information once she's been provided with documents responsive to her public records request that has been served on the board.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 8?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Treasurer Ballmer. Paragraph 9 alleges that in calendar year 2014, the board restricted your access to the email system of the Stow Munroe Falls City School District, the district, so that you could no longer access the email accounts of all the board employees. You became upset with the decision and have complained and caused disruption within the administrative team over this decision of the board. Your continued disruption of the board's administrative team regarding the board's decision to restrict your unfettered access to the email accounts of all board employees, which in no way affected your job duties, constitutes a violation of both Board Policy 1320 in your employment contract, and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
Ms. Bulgrin has provided a written response to that allegation. She reserves the right to supplement her response once she receives the documents responsive to the public records request that she's delivered to the board.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 9?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Treasurer Barbara. Paragraph 10 alleges that in September 2014, Director of Operations Mark Fritz restricted your access to the security cameras of the district so that you could no longer access every security camera in every building in the district. You became upset and confrontational with Director Fritz over the fact that your access to the security cameras was limited, despite the fact that your job duties in no way require access to the district's security cameras. You then called the security company directly, without board authorization, in the unauthorized attempt to restore your unrestricted access, without informing either Director Fritz or the board. These actions created animosity between you and Director Fritz, and that animosity has hampered your functioning of the board's administrative team. Your actions of becoming upset and confrontational with Director Fritz regarding your access to the district's security cameras and then usurping the authority of Director Fritz and contacting the security company directly to restore your access to the district security cameras, which ultimately impede the functioning of the board's administrative team, constitutes a violation of both board policy 1320 in your employment contract and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
Ms. Bulgrin has provided a written response to that allegation. She reserves the right to supplement that response when she obtains information subject to the public records request that's been served on the board.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 10?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 11 alleges that in October or November of 2014, you became aware of a complaint of alleged harassment of a board office staff member by another board office staff member. Despite your knowledge of the complaint of alleged harassment, you failed to report the complaint to the board's anti-harassment compliance officers as required by the board's anti-harassment policies. While all board employees are expected to follow board policy and report complaints of alleged harassment to the board's anti-harassment compliance officers, as the district's treasurer, your failure to do so is especially egregious, your failure to report your knowledge of a complaint of alleged harassment to the board's anti-harassment compliance compliance officers constitutes a violation of your employment contract as well as board policies 1320, 1662, 3362, and or 4362, and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
Ms. Bulgrin has provided a written response to that allegation detailing the background for that allegation of sexual harassment. As she obtains additional information in response to a public records request, she will further provide a response or a supplemental response.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 11?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 12 alleges that in October 2014, the loading dock area behind the board office was made a no parking zone. You disregarded the no parking restriction and continued to park in the loading dock area. You and the treasurer's office staff then proceeded to argue with Director Fritz over the parking restriction, further disrupting the working relationship among board office staff. Your repeated and continual refusal to comply with the no parking restriction, as well as your arguments with Director Fritz regarding the same, constitutes violations of both board policy 1320 and your employment contract, and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
Ms. Bulgrin has provided a written response to that allegation, reserves the right to supplement a response once she received documents that are responsive to a public records request that's been served on the board.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 12?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer Barman. Paragraph 13 alleges that in August 2014, you unilaterally paid yourself and Superintendent Jones in a lump sum the entire contractual supplemental compensation amount for the August 1st, 2014 through July 31st, 2015 contract year. The prior practice was to make these payments at the end of the contract year. Your unilateral decision to change this practice was not authorized by the board. And it is not permitted by either your Superintendent Jones employment contracts. Your decision to pay the supplemental compensation at the beginning of the year resulted in Superintendent Jones receiving full payment for his August 1st, 2014 through July 31st, 2015 supplemental compensation. Even though he will be resigning his employment with the board in February 2015, while the board has now agreed to pay Superintendent Jones his full supplemental compensation for adequate consideration, this agreement would not have been necessary but for your unauthorized action. Your unilateral decision to pay your own as well as that of Superintendent Jones supplemental compensation at the beginning of the contract year without board approval, as opposed to the end of the contract year, as had been the prior practice, constitutes a violation of board policy 1320 in your employment contract and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under revised code 33-119.16. Please respond.
The allegations contained in this paragraph are absolutely untrue and slanderous. At no time did Catherine Bulgrin ever pay herself a lump sum, and we challenge the author of the letter to provide documentation supporting that allegation. Furthermore, the lump sum payment to Superintendent Jones was done pursuant to the terms of his contract at the beginning of his contract year, and Ms. Bulgrin challenges the author of the letter to provide documentation to the contrary. Furthermore, at the time the lump sum payment was made to Superintendent Jones, he had not announced his retirement. He subsequently announced his retirement, and Ms. Bulgrin advised him and board members that there would have to be a recovery of a pro rata amount of the lump sum payment if he did not complete the fiscal year. It was thereafter the board's decision to allow him to retain the full amount of the lump sum payment, even though he would be departing the system prior to the end of the fiscal year. The facts that have been asserted in allegation 13, which have now been published by this board to the public, are completely untrue and were published with full knowledge of their falsity or a complete reckless disregard for the truth or falsity thereof. Ms. Bulgrin did not violate any board policy nor her employment contract. Notably, the letter of January 19, 2015 is the first time that this issue had been raised with Ms. Bulgrin as a disciplinary issue. Had someone had a legitimate concern on this issue, they could have easily approached Ms. Bulgrin as the treasurer, and they would have been fully informed as to the truth of the matter, thereby avoiding the dissemination of lies regarding her contractual supplemental compensation and the contractual supplemental compensation paid to Superintendent Jones.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 13?
Yes, we are demanding an immediate retraction of that allegation and a public apology now.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 13?
We reserve all rights, including the right to make supplemental submissions to this body after the board responds to our public records request.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 13?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer Barber. Paragraph 14 alleges that in October 2014, Superintendent Jones provided you the information required to process his February 2015 retirement with the State Teachers Retirement System of Ohio, STRS. You did not process the information until January 2015 and failed to seek any guidance from the board before reporting Superintendent Jones's supplemental compensation to STRS. Your failure to timely submit Superintendent Jones' retirement information to STRS and failure to communicate with the board regarding the reporting of Superintendent Jones' supplemental compensation constitutes violations of both Board Policy 1320 and your employment contract, and constitute good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
Ms. Bulgrin has provided a written response to this allegation. She reserves the right to supplement that response once the board has responded to her public records request.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 14?
Not at this time.
Excuse me, 5 minutes. Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 15 alleges that you were directed by the board to provide meeting minutes to the board members within 72 hours of the completion of regular board meetings. Despite the directive from the board regarding the same, you have consistently failed to provide the minutes within the required time frame. Your continued refusal to follow the directive from the board to provide board minutes, meeting minutes, within 72 hours of the completion of regular board meetings constitute violations of both Board Policy 1320 in your employment contract and constitute good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
Ms. Bulgrin has provided a written response to the allegations. She reserves the right to supplement that response once the board has responded to the public records request that has been served upon them.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 15?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Treasurer Bulgrin, paragraph 16. We'll take a brief recess right now. Probably about 1 minute.
You said I parked by that loading dock, I better move.
At this time, we will resume after the recess. Prior to the recess, I want to make sure that I give Treasurer Bulgrin the opportunity to respond to paragraph 15. Do you have a response at this time?
I believe we have responded, but for the record, Ms. Bulgrin has provided a written response to that allegation and reserves the right to supplement her response once she has received the documents that are responsive to a public records request that I served on the board.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 15?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 16 alleges that in September of 2014, your access to passwords pertaining to the district's food service operation was restricted for confidentiality concerns. You argued with Director Fritz over this restriction and then forced a subordinate employee to provide you with the password despite your job duties having nothing to do with the operation of the district food service program. You then shared the password with the treasurer's office staff. Your actions were surreptitiously obtaining the district's food service passwords and then sharing them with your staff constitute violations of your employment contract, as well as board policies 1320, 8330, 8350, and 8500, and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under revised code RC 3319.16. Please respond.
The allegation contained in number 16 is frankly untrue. It frankly never happened. The Treasurer's Office has always had access to the POS system for reporting on NutriKids. The discussion contained in your paragraph 16 may relate to a commodity report that affects services of food, but it's unclear what Director Fritz appears to be talking about. My job as treasurer requires the receipt and reconciliation of the POS sales, and I have annually utilized the commodity report. Recently, I was deprived access to the commodity report to assist food services, and as a consequence, food services was forced to undergo a 100% audit. The allegations of this paragraph are unclear, uninformative, and frankly make no sense. At no time did I or my office ever surreptitiously obtain passwords. I did not violate any board policy, nor did I violate my employment contract. Further, the letter of January 19th is the first time this matter has ever been brought to my attention.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 16?
Yes, Ms. Bulgrin reserves the right to supplement her response to this allegation after she has obtained documents responsive to the public records request that was served upon the board by myself on her behalf.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 16?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 17 alleges that in January 2014, the question arose as to whether the board's classified employees should receive compensation for calamity days. And when the days were later made up, the board's legal counsel at the time provided a legal opinion that pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement, the employees should be paid for the calamity days as well as the makeup days. While the board agreed with the legal opinion, you disagreed with the legal opinion and, without board authorization, sought an opinion from the district's auditors on this issue. This resulted in extra legal fees and audit costs that the board would not have otherwise incurred. Had you simply acted in accordance with the advice of the board's legal counsel, with which the board agreed, your refusal to accept legal guidance from the board's legal counsel is agreed to by the board, constitutes a violation of both board policy 1320 and your employment contract, and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
Ms. Bulgrin has provided a written response to this allegation number 17. She reserves the right to supplement her response once she has been provided with copies of the public records that she has requested through her attorney.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 17?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 18 alleges that in August of 2014, the district received public records requests from Mike Barnes and Jeannie Fensel, and additional public records requests from Mike Barnes. In September and October of 2014, or on or about October 1 of 2014, the board's attorneys met with you and your staff to discuss how the responses should be prepared. The board's attorneys advised your office to obtain Adobe Pro software. to process the responses to requests for the district's email correspondence. On or about October 24, 2014, the responses were not completed and the Adobe Pro software had not been obtained. Accordingly, on or about October 24th, 2014, you were directed by then Board President Bonacci to have all public records responses completed in full by October 27th, 2014. Board President Bonacci extended that deadline to October 29th, 2014. At your request, on or about October 29th of 2014, the board's attorneys met with you and your staff and again reviewed the public records response process. On that date, the Adobe Pro software still had not been obtained, causing the superintendent to send his secretary to Best Buy to purchase the software. On or about October 31st, 2014, a mediation conference was held with the Ohio Attorney General's office in Mr. Barnes regarding his August, September, and October 2014 public records requests. As the responses were still not available, on or about October 31, 2014, Board President Bonacci directed you to have all public records responses completed by November 7, 2014. The public records responses were finally completed on or about November 5th of 2014, with substantial assistance from the board's attorneys. Your continued refusal to prepare responses to public records requests and refusal to comply with the board's directives to do the same constitutes violations of board policies 1320, 8310, RC 149.43 in your employment contract, and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
In August of 2014, the district did in fact receive public records requests. Furthermore, it is true that there were multiple meetings, including meetings with the superintendent and Attorney Giffords, Attorney Markling, and Attorney Robel regarding what was and was not a public record. The issue with the Adobe software was a problem created by either the board's misunderstanding or the misdirection of the superintendent. Attorney Markling, who is present here today, advised the treasurer and the public records staff that he would contact the superintendent to obtain the Adobe Pro software. The treasurer's office was never told to obtain the Adobe Pro software. Superintendent Jones was told by Mr. Markling to purchase the software, but did not do so immediately, thereby creating a further delay. Subsequently, the software was delivered to the Treasurer's Department, and the superintendent was then informed that the Treasurer's Department did not have the necessary IT training to load the software into the board's network. They requested assistance from the IT department. Ultimately, the IT department did load the software, and the Treasurer's Office proceeded with the public records request. Much of the delay in processing the public records request was the fact that there were several pieces of very sensitive emails that were being held by Attorney Giffords and Attorney Markling, who's with us today, as they were reviewing the sensitive documents to determine whether or not they were appropriate for public record dissemination. At no time did I delay or interfere with the publication of public records. Part of the problem in responding to the public records request was the access to my email that had been denied, which is part and parcel to the public records that were being requested. My restricted access to email obviously interfered with my ability and my staff's ability to reproduce documents in response to public records requests, ultimately involving paying the attorneys, Mr. Markling and others, to sanitize the records before they were produced, And that was further delays based upon their holding the records as they attempted to determine what was and was not a public record. I reject any notion that I delayed the production of public records. I did not violate any board policy. I did not violate my employment contract. This matter, like many of those that were addressed in the letter of January 19, 2015, is the first time that I have been provided notice that this was a disciplinary issue.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 19?
Yes, Ms. Bulgrin reserves the right to supplement additional information in support of her response to this allegation after the public records that have been requested have been produced.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 19?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 20 alleges that you attempted to hire an outside audit company in order to perform...
Rod, skip 19.
19, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Treasurer Bulgrin, paragraph 19 alleges that in October of 2013, the district received a $50,000 payment from First Energy. The board directed you to set these funds aside so they could be used for a special project. However, you instead placed the First Energy payment in the general fund. Your action of placing the First Energy payment in the general fund was a violation of the board's directive. Otherwise, it resulted in the funds not being available for the purposes intended by the board. Your refusal to comply with the board's directive constitutes a violation of both Board Policy 1320 and your employment contract, and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under Revised Code 3319.16. Please respond.
This allegation reflects the board's absence of understanding of the role of the treasurer and her duty to account to the district and the auditor for funds received. In October 2013, the district did in fact receive a $50,000 payment from First Energy. Those funds, like all miscellaneous funds, must be deposited into the general fund by Ohio law. Failure to deposit them into the general fund would be a violation of Ohio law and would be subject to action by the state auditor. They cannot be segregated into a special project fund, commonly referred to as a slush fund. The proceeds were deposited into the general fund as required by state law. During Ms. Bulgrin's tenure as treasurer, at no time has she ever permitted, authorized, or participated in any efforts to hide money in a special project fund. Further, to her knowledge, there was never a board directive on this particular issue. Perhaps the board could produce such a document to substantiate their allegations. However, we believe it is highly unlikely that such a document would exist, as it would be evidence of their attempt to break Ohio law relative to creating slush funds without putting the money into the general fund. Ms. Bulgrin did not violate the board policy, did not violate her employment contract. She followed Ohio law and is now being disciplined for complying with Ohio law and ignoring an illegal request by members of this board.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 19?
Ms. Bulgrin reserves the right to supplement her response to this allegation once the board has supplied the documents responsive to the public records document request that I submitted.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 19?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer Bulgrin. Treasurer Bulgrin, paragraph 20 alleges that you attempted to hire an outside audit company in order to perform all of the work necessary for you to achieve the meritorious budget award as set forth in your annual goals for 2014-15 school year. As the board's treasurer and chief financial officer, it is your responsibility to perform the duties of your position, not simply use board funds to hire an outside entity to perform the essential functions of your job. Attempting to hire an outside entity with board funds to perform your job duties constitutes a violation of board policy 1320 in your employment contract and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
Ms. Bulgrin has supplied the board and its counsel with a written response to this allegation. She reserves the right to provide supplemental information once the board has responded to the public records request that has been delivered by me on her behalf.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 20?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Thank you. Treasurer Bulgrin, paragraph 21 alleges that rather than developing an annual budget to share with the board as required, you simply provided the board with a series of budget summaries that are available through the state software. Only after the board took action to non-renew your employment contract on January 13th, 2015, and advised your legal counsel that the board would be proceeding with discipline termination process, did you finally provide a draft copy of an annual budget to the board on Friday, January 16th, 2015. This failure to perform even the most basic of your job functions as the board's treasurer and chief financial officer constitutes a violation of both board policy 1320 in your employment contract and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under revised RC 3319.16. Please respond.
Ms. Bulgrin has provided a written response to that allegation. She reserves the right to supplement the response once the board has responded to the public records request that I've delivered to the board on her behalf.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 21?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Treasurer Bulgrin, paragraph 22 alleges that the board directed you to submit your reports to the board on Thursday before regular board meetings. You agreed. And yet you consistently refused to meet this Thursday deadline. This failure to perform even the most basic of your job functions as the board treasurer and chief financial officer constitutes a violation of both board policy 1320 in your employment contract and constitutes good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
Ms. Bulgrin has provided a written response to this allegation. She reserves the right to supplement her response once the board has responded to the public records request that was submitted to the board by myself on her behalf.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 22?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Treasurer Bulgrin, paragraph 23 alleges that you contacted Assistant Superintendent Tom Bratton, who will replace retiring Superintendent Jones effective February 1, 2015, on several occasions before Assistant Superintendent Bratton even began his employment with the board on January 5th of 2015. During these conversations, you made unsolicited, highly critical comments about individual board members and criticized Superintendent Jones, as well as decisions of the board. As the treasurer and chief financial officer of the board, you hold a position where trust and confidence is essential. Board Policy 1320, Duties of the Treasurer, provides that your duties and responsibilities include maintaining the highest standards of personal conduct, professional practice, administrative effectiveness, and financial responsibility of the district. Moreover, the job description for the treasurer CFO identifies the following key function: communication and collaboration. The treasurer communicates and collaborates effectively with the Board of Education, district leadership, and stakeholders. Your comments regarding the board members and Superintendent Jones demonstrate a complete lack of collaboration with the board, poor professional practice, and a lack of collaboration with district leadership and stakeholders. Accordingly, your unsolicited negative comments to Assistant Superintendent Bratton regarding board members and Superintendent Jones constitute a violation of your employment contract as well as board policies 1200, 1320, and constitute good and just cause for discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
It is correct that the treasurer had contact with the Assistant Superintendent Tom Bratton prior to the board meeting of January 5th, 2015. However, the treasurer did not have contact with Mr. Bratton until she had been advised that he would be taking over as the new superintendent. It was at that time that he and the treasurer had a conversation regarding the upcoming school levy, where the discussion focused on whether it would be a 5-year levy or a 10-year levy. The discussion also addressed certain standard operating procedures. It led to a discussion regarding the parking issue, which ultimately led to a discussion regarding the treasurer's use of the parking space in the evening hours to allow safe access from the building to her car, which represents a safety issue not only for her but for others. It also led to the issue of the cameras and Mr. Fritz's unilateral decision to disallow the treasurer access to the cameras when in fact there are safes located throughout the school system, and it is her obligation as treasurer to monitor those safes as they retain funds that are properly accounted for by the treasurer. This ultimately led to a discussion regarding Mr. Fritz and the sexually charged environment that he has created, making it uncomfortable for several of the female staff, including the treasurer. As the incoming superintendent, and relying upon those notions of trust, truthfulness, and cooperation, he certainly should have been informed of these prior to my meeting. In fact, he was not so informed, and therefore he and I discussed the issues briefly. As the treasurer, the levy issue is very important to the financial integrity of the district. The parking issue solely relates to employee safety, and the camera access relates not only to safety, but to my role as treasurer, and the matter involving sexual harassment by Mr. Fritz, having previously been reported to Superintendent Jones, has been a continuing concern. My reports to Mr. Bratton did not violate my employment contract, but are in accord with my employment contract, did not violate any board policy. This allegation, like so many others, is now being used to further harass, intimidate, bully, embarrass, humiliate me, and place me in an ongoing hostile work environment. Your letter of January 19th, 2015 is the first time that I was notified that this was a, quote, disciplinary issue.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 23?
Yes, Ms. Bulgrin reserves the right to supplement her response to this allegation after she receives copies of the public records which have been requested by myself on her behalf.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 23?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Treasurer Bulgrin, paragraph 24 alleges that employees at the board office have reported that you have created a pervasive atmosphere of intimidation and a toxic, hostile work environment through your behavior. Your administrative peers have approached you about your behavior, but it has continued, creating an atmosphere of mistrust and dysfunction among the employees of the board office. This constitutes a violation of your employment contract as well as board policies 1200, 1320, 1662, 3362, and/or 4362, and constitutes and just cause for thus discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
This particular allegation is vague. It does not identify the person or persons of whom it speaks, and it fails to meet the mandates of Loudermill in identifying specific acts or conduct. Ms. Bulgrin reserves the right to supplement her response to this allegation once she has received additional documentation from the production of the public records, and further provides this board with the written response that you have before you.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 24?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Treasurer Bulgrin. Paragraph 25 alleges that as the board's treasurer and chief financial officer, you are held to the highest standard of professionalism and competence. Yet instead of being a leader and role model throughout the district, you consistently fail to perform your basic job duties in a competent and efficient manner. Consistently disregard board directives and are a consistent source of discord and disruption for the board and its administrative team. This constitutes a violation of your employment contract as well as board policies 1200 and 1320, and constitutes good and just cause for the discipline or termination under RC 3319.16. Please respond.
Ms. Bulgrin denies this allegation for all of the reasons that are set forth in her response to allegations 1 through 24 in the document you have before you, and the remarks that have been offered on her behalf this evening. They are all incorporated herein. Ms. Bulgrin has not violated board policy, and she has not violated her employment contract. Rod Armstrong and a few select individuals have made it their mission to find up and/or make up reasons under the sun to terminate Ms. Bulgrin. Ms. Bulgrin will stand tall as the treasurer and the chief financial officer of the Stow Munroe School District, and will not allow Mr. Armstrong's and others' spurious allegations, slanderous statements, and lies to go unanswered and unchallenged. Her reputation in the district remains untarnished, as evidenced by the multiple state audits and her past documented performance reviews.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 25?
Yes, as we have previously stated, Ms. Bulgrin reserves the right to provide additional information to refute each and every one of the 25 enumerated allegations after she has received a full response to the public records request made by myself, her attorney, on her behalf relative to this matter.
Do you have anything else to say with respect to paragraph 25?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Because the board has a need for one executive session, I move that the board recess into executive session for the purpose of considering the employment, dismissal, and discipline of a public employee. Information to be discussed during this executive session is confidential. As such, preserving confidentiality is necessary for the conduct of the board's business and is therefore subject to the non-disclosure requirements of of RC 102.03B. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
I have the time,
I have
Oh, I'll get that.
7:13.
7:13.
Yes, 7:15.
Mr. Armstrong,
Aye.
Ms. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Matthews,
Aye.
Mr. Bonacci, Ms. Matthews, Dedio. Aye.
The time is 7:13, and we are now recessed into executive session.
I thought you left.
So, we've had too much fun.
Okay, the time is
Hearing all the stories.
8:21. We are now out of executive session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call, discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Matthews,
Aye.
Ms. Powers,
Aye.
Mr. Armstrong,
Aye.
Mr. Bonacci.
Aye.
Ms. Dedio. Aye.
Oh, my God.